Now, Flippy update.
Flippy update.
Do you want fries with that?
That's right, folks. Time for the Flippy update. Flippy is our colloquial name for the disembodied robot arms that are taking our jobs, enslaving our children, and flirting with our spouses. We use talking about Flippy as a way to explore broadly how robots are taking over the world and how there's nothing we can do about it. It's been a bit of a push and pull, an interesting conflict between the robo heads and the human lovers. About who will win, how many of our jobs will be taken by robots, when will they be taken. And Wall Street Journal has traditionally been a little bit more on the human side. It's been interesting, but I'm not sure if this is the most effective way to do this. This is coming from wallstreetjournal.com. The headline is "Companies are slow to adopt robot-operated dark warehouses." Now, dark warehouses. During the pandemic, we started reporting on dark warehouses, which is warehouses that are almost entirely staffed or operated by robots. And the idea is if you have a bunch of robots in there, you don't need to light the warehouse. So they call them dark warehouses. And this is certainly on its way and will eventually become, not only will they be dark warehouses, but it'll be dark restaurants, dark preschools, dark universities, dark governments. There will be no humans at all, okay? We understand how this works. Yeah. But the Wall Street Journal comes in and says, this is kind of happening slower than expected, mainly because,
the light is too powerful.
Yeah, right. Yes,
we always lose to the light.
We must shine a light in the darkness. Interesting how, the implication of shining a light in the darkness means that there's no need for robots or something. I don't know. But let me get into it. It opens up like this. More companies are exploring ways to staff warehouses with robots, but may have to wait a few years for the technology to catch up. Which is kind of like, duh. I mean, we know that. Even the most pro-robot takeover analysis is like, yes, robots are going to kill us all and take over the world. Probably won't happen for a few more years, though, so don't get excited. The way the past 3 years went, we'll probably blink and suddenly we ourselves will all become robots and we hadn't even noticed it happening.
9.
What?
Nothing, continue.
Okay. I'm going to skip down to about the fourth or fifth paragraph here.
Okay.
And it's got some interesting details. In 2019, German online pharmacy company apo.com group opened a 220,000 square foot warehouse in the Netherlands that uses automation to handle 25,000 to 30,000 orders a day with about 20 employees on each of 3 shifts. The company invested more than $100 million in the building and the automation, said Michael Fritsch, the company's founder and former chief executive. Mr. Fritsch said a manual warehouse would have required roughly 400 employees and about twice as much square footage to fulfill the same number of orders. So not only do you need more employees, but you also need more space. He said he also would have had to hire licensed pharmacy professionals for those roles and would have faced challenges in finding that number of qualified people and paying their higher salaries.
Wow.
So often we think of warehouse robots as replacing sort of lower level jobs,
the menial jobs or kind of
and lower paid jobs.
Lower paid,
I mean,
I
don't think there's such thing as a no skill job, but the elites consider warehouse work to be a lower skill job. They're not making the big bucks. It's fairly straightforward. There's not, as far as I know, I could be wrong, but there's not a whole lot of brain power or college education needed for this type of thing. It's not knowledge work, basically. Right. Whereas a pharmacy professional is a much more licensed situation. So we we talk about the sort of lower or middle class jobs being taken away by the robots. But in this case, they're talking about pharmacists, pharmacy professionals, maybe pharmacy technicians. You got to go to school for a couple years or something, and you get paid more than whatever, $40,000 a year or something. Yeah. So we're talking about, and here's the thing, this warehouse would not have been possible, is kind of what they're trying to say. Right. You cannot get 400 pharmacy technicians in the same town. At least that's what we're learning from this.
Well, that's what they're saying. Yeah.
That's what they're saying. So the existence of a pharmacy warehouse pumping out 30,000 orders a day, it would be an impossibility. So it is the robots that create their own sort of job stealing opportunities.
How come these robots? Well, I guess these robots are programmed with all of the necessities and qualifications of a pharmacist.
So when it comes to pharmacists, they, I know a pharmacist, by their own account, it's basically, you're almost literally bean counters. You're sitting there, you're counting pills. Yeah. And of course, you've got some skills and knowledge about what the drugs do. But more or less, the minute-to-minute work is counting pills. And now the reason you have licensed pharmacists and stuff is because, of course, you don't want drugs disappearing. You want them held accountable. You don't want just anybody walking in off the street having access to, pharmaceuticals. So they have to be licensed, stuff like this. But the robots are not going to steal all the Vicodin and not the yet. Oxycodone. Not the robots, there's no threat that the robots are going to, become black market Vicodin dealers. At least as of now. Yeah, right.
We've seen Bender.
They get, exactly. They get some entrepreneurial spirit code involved, and then we'll see what happens. So in this case, you have the robots not only centralizing 400 pharmacy technician jobs into one building when it would have been impossible before, but you're also taking away jobs that are you go to school to get a license for and an education for. No longer is it simply a warehouse worker, a stuff mover getting replaced, which I think is an interesting development on this scale, because we've seen, the AI lawyers or the AI artists or something, but those aren't really at scale right now. But replacing 400 pharmacists at scale is a pretty big deal.
Yeah, that's true.
It goes on to this quote. You don't find this amount of pharmacists in one town. So that's the problem, he said. We wouldn't be able to do this without the robots. So we just wouldn't be able to do it. It wouldn't exist without the robots. The warehouse uses robotic picking arms from the Right Hand Robotics Incorporated of Somerville, Massachusetts, that are capable of picking 97% of the pharmacy's inventory, given the relatively uniform size of items, Mr. Fritsch said. And then it goes into some more sort of nationwide details. There was a fun... They go back to talking about why more warehouses have not done this, but they are referring to this one warehouse when they say, Mr. Jensen said it is complex to train a robotic arm to pick up some 50,000 different types of grocery items that are in all kinds of packaging. Ocado also experienced 3 fires in 3 years at its warehouses due to robots colliding, an electrical fault in a battery charging unit, and a fire that broke out outside a warehouse in waste packaging container. Mr. Jensen said the company made changes after the first fire in 2019, limiting damage from later fires. So just a little bit of safety concerns thrown in there as well.
No, that was either a suicidal robot. We're gonna have to find out what kind of robotitarian, injustices were taking place. That happened.
Yes, roboticist.
So anyway, that's interesting.
Robot assist. Yeah. So this is an example. What was most striking to me is while the Wall Street Journal is kind of reporting on how, don't worry, you've got a couple more years until all warehouses are dark. Thank you, Wall Street Journal. But you have the creation of these warehouses, specifically in this case, the pharmacist one, that could not exist. It would be impossible to centralize economics, the money made from a giant warehouse, centralize the service, that is ordering pharmaceuticals online and having them delivered through one warehouse. It just would be impossible. So who says robots are not creating opportunity for warehouse owners?
The model moving forward with stuff like this, what they'll try to do, and this kind of gets into the territory of UBI, which we'll talk about in a little bit. But it's also my favorite topic to bring up on the show, which is DAOs. Yes. Because once people can, let's say this warehouse creates its own token, and then people can invest in that token, which is basically investing in like a dark warehouse.
Here we go.
Then you make your money from the profit that you get, and so everyone's happy and the robots are happy.
Sure.
You get a vote. You get a vote in how the robot warehouse operates. That's the future, folks. But anyway.
Well, I think the one last sort of nail in the coffin of this situation is that is a lot of capability for delivering drugs, and it is sort of connected to the mental health crises, the reliance on pills and medications for healthcare instead of also, just not eating processed foods or whatever. And it is equipping the sort of notoriously shadowy big pharma company to cut out middlemen. In a way, you have so many middlemen between the actual big pharma company and you, but with restricted chemicals and drugs like this, to be able to do a direct from manufacturer kind of business model is incredibly profitable for big pharma. So there's a lot of different aspects of what's wrong with this world wrapped up in this robot pharmacy.